So we're going to begin today talking about double exposures. And for this project, you really need a concept, a why. And like I just said before I started the recording, this is a picture of my husband and a picture of Maroon Bells. We were up in Aspen for our anniversary, went hiking through Maroon Bells, took this picture. It was just a special place to us. And so I think whenever he's like, I want to go up to the mountains, there's some part that this is what he's talking about. So as we move through this project, I want to talk a little bit about the artist that inspired this project. Is anyone familiar with Jerry Uelsman? He's fantastic. He passed away recently, but yeah, in 2022. He was married to Maggie Taylor, and they both taught at a university in Florida. And he was this dark room photographer. So I'm showing you these pictures. I'm sure some of you are like, "Oh, I've seen this before." The hands with the water droplet in it, or this. So here we've got multiple, right? Stop moving, camera. Here we go. We have multiple exposures here. There's a picture of a book, presumably a Bible, his hands overlaid on it. Stop moving. There we go. And then these clouds in some sort of classical or neoclassical background, a bird and a person. He did all of this before Photoshop. There we go. So I want you guys to imagine you're in the darkroom, you're not cutting up negatives, you're creating masks out of cardstock. So in the darkroom, we have burning and dodging tools, right? So our burning and dodging tools help us to either cover up places or add more exposure in places. So thinking about making these kind of images, here we go. He was taking multiple negatives on multiple enlargers and one piece of light sensitive paper. Wrap your minds around that one. So here again, he's got a negative of a tree, a negative of a mask, and some backgrounds. So he's burning in sections and dodging out other sections. It is everything that we do in Photoshop. He was doing it for real in the dark room. Why? Photoshop wasn't good enough yet. His wife, on the other hand, is Maggie Taylor, who is an amazing Photoshop artist. She is 63 years young and makes these beautiful composite images. Her and Jerry Uelsman were doing the same thing, right? He stayed tethered to a dark room and she embraced Photoshop. I want you guys to really kind of, well, just pick one image for example and see how she uses masking and blending. She often goes to like thrift stores and finds actual old pictures to begin her work, and then uses thousands and thousands of layers to make them look the way they do. What direction will you go with your your double exposure? That's entirely up to you. But here, I want you to see these ideas as concepts. Okay. So we're not just, I think I have a Uelsman video. Here we go. Oh, that link does not work. That is fun. There we are. So we're going to watch just a brief portion of this to kind of see some of the dark room activities. Let me skip here and turn that off. This is 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
More than the mind. Someone came up with a quote that the eye sees more than the mind knows. And this was a big thing that at one point, one of the theories that was being promoted. And I thought, well, maybe the mind sees more than the eye knows. This particular image involves 4 different negatives. And basically the way I work, I have the different elements in different enlargers. And what I would normally be doing is taking a fresh sheet of photographic paper out, and I've worked out the alignment of where that's going to fall on the piece of paper. And then I would be printing the top half of the image on this enlarger. And then once that's done, I would go to the next enlarger. This does require a little bit of dodging. Let's lighten that part of the rock there.
And see, he is using, I don't know if I can find it quickly enough, basically a opened up paper clip and a piece of cardstock to dodge out that area or to not let it be exposed. And remember, these are negatives. So everything that you see is dark. So the reason he is masking or dodging out that dark area is because in a positive, it will be the very light area.
And then here we're printing the eye, which
so he
is
still
going
can't
on
see
top of
anything.
that rock.
Like that paper's still
that
blank. He
has,
hasn't developed it
a
yet.
filter to increase the contrast.
It's a number
of the
5
eye.
filter. It's kind of
And
magenta in
then
color.
here, I'm printing this figure that is embedded in the grass. And it's a matter of working out critically how these things are going to fall on the paper and working out the correct printing times to have the enlargers on in contrast. But it takes many hours to set it up. Once it's set up, it can be a kind of production line in which you could produce several copies of the same image. It takes a couple minutes for this, but this is the magic part of photography. This is the alchemy. This is the one thing that those people that work on computers don't get. I've been doing this for over 50 years, and I still find this aspect to be very magical. It's been developed. Take it out of this solution.
So there are 3 solutions: developer, stop bath, and fixer. So the developer you leave in for about a minute or so, and it basically removes any non-sensitized silver ions and washes them away. The dark areas that remain are the silver ions that have been sensitized.
Put it into this one. Initially, this stops the action of the developer.
It's a stop bath.
It's called short stop. And then from there, we put it into the fixing solution, which makes that image permanent so it can be handled in white light. And there we have the finished product from our efforts using the 4 different enlargers. For me, it's my way of, connecting with the world. And I like the idea that I can invent a reality that for me is personally more meaningful than the one that's literally given to the eye.
I'm going to stop for just a second. What do you guys think? Are we all just a little bit grateful for Photoshop? Think about the amount of time each one of those exposure tests took, never mind the masking out. And often so there's like a little bellows that you put your negative in, and he would actually build the mask inside of there. So we're all still talking about a relatively rectangular image that we're masking portions out of. All right. So for you guys, in week 10, let's just talk a little bit, and I have a lot of examples to show you, and I have a quick video that will show you how to do a double exposure in 74 seconds. And this just goes to show the process is not, at this point, I'm quite confident you all understand, right? You're going to find 2 images, hopefully that both have meaning. Izzy or Esther might be having a friend help today. Find 2 images that are meaningful. You bring them into Photoshop. You're going to use some blending modes and some masking, and you're going to build out a background and maybe add some sort of colors or gradients or something. One question I'm sure that's rolling around in a few of your heads: double exposure. Can this just be 2 things? Absolutely not. We just saw Jerry Yolsman make one with 4 different pieces to the puzzle. You're welcome to make this as complicated as you want. But again, what I'm going to ask you when we come back together on Monday after spring break, What is yours about? Okay, there has to be a clear concept. It can't just be, I found this cool picture on Unsplash and then I just double exposed it. All right, so let's watch this quick 74-second video with a lot of loud noises. Here we
Today I'm
go.
going to share with you how to create a simple double exposure with Photoshop. With the quick selection tool selected, click on Select Subject. Once selected properly, click on the mask button right here. Click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose Solid Color.
Don't try to
Choose
keep
white
notes,
as the
just
color
watch
and
it.
hit OK. Place it under the subject. Now select the subject layer and drag and drop the second photo that you want to create double exposure with over the canvas. Adjust it according to your preferences. Hit enter or return. Now you want to change the background color to that of the brightest color in this image. So we're going to double click right here to change the background color and pick the brightest color of the new image. Hit OK. Come back to the landscape and change the blend mode from normal to screen. To limit it just to the subject,
Voila.
hold the Alt key or the Option key and click on the line between these two layers.
What's
To add
this
more
called?
details to the subject,
Clipping
select the subject layer
mask.
again, click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose curves. Take the rightmost slider to the left. Now, we don't want the shadows to be faded, so take the leftmost slider to the right a little bit as well. Now we want the trees to fade away, so you can select the mask right here, take the brush, black as the foreground color, slowly and gradually erase the extras. So that's how to quickly create a super simple double exposure in Photoshop.
Easy peasy, right? And I have duplicated this almost exactly for you guys, and I'm happy to walk through a demo of it. I just started off with an image and then masked out the background, right? So we've got just a background or just the person here. And then I've got a cool picture of just some forest and trees. This is a watercolor that I found online. I'm selecting all, copying it and pasting it over here. And let me undo that. Just pasted it right. I'll paste it over for you guys. Copy and paste. There we go. And we can just, again, just like he did in the demo video, decide how much and where we want to cover. I've done this a couple of times, so I kind of know what I'm looking for, but an easy way is just to change your opacity while you're moving this around. And I don't want to do anything too crazy, like have this, I don't know, dark part sticking up his nose or anything like that. We're just really conscious of features. And I'll bring this down below that. We don't even need this layer. And then what are we going to do? We are just going to clip it to this image. Simple as can be. And I do have a curves layer on here we'll talk about after. But let's bring our fill back up. And remember, we can still move it around. It's just a layer mask. Everybody remember making your name in that exercise 3? I've just clipped it to it. So I can release my clipping mask just as simply. And then there's my image. Okay. We're going to clip it back by holding Option and clicking. And then I did do this curves layer. Let me show you here. So I did, this is what it looked like before, right? And this is still clipped to my image of the man. So I'm going to take my curves levels, my curves layer from the top and move it all the way over and bring the bottom over as well. We're going to do this until we are pleased with the image. And then play around with the background, right? And here we can always add a layer mask and come over with our brush. I've got black as my foreground and I've got my opacity at 36. And we could just bring back these facial features. If we went too far, we hit X and just paint back over them. Everybody feel good about that? Awesome. Next, we can add a gradient map to the background. And remember, we just did this. If we think that, and remember, we could play around with everything in here. We want our background darker. If we say, hey, you know what? We don't even like this color. Voila. This is just the gradient map that is affecting the background. So I'm going to add another color over here and pick, no, maybe a warmer gray to kind of combat or compete with that background. If we find it again to be too much, pull it out and we can always make any changes that we want to in here and say okay. If you want to do a full background color fill like I did on the one of Matt, you can do that and then always be able to change your colors very quickly and easily. I want to keep this really light and whimsical. If I go too dark, I feel like it really takes away from the image in general. And we can be done at this point. All right, just a few clicks. And then we have this really nice image. Or you are welcome to find a mock-up of anything, a magazine, whatever. And I went through and changed a lot of the words on these. And then I just made a JPEG of him and brought him over and made a magazine cover out of it. You are welcome to, I guess, kind of choose your own adventure. Jennifer asked a question, should we take a photo of the individual against a plain white or black background? Yes. Excellent, excellent, Jennifer. You want to take a picture of your subject against a white or clean background. That way it is easy to make that double exposure or to make that initial selection. So here we have, I'll just redo this one for you. So here we have a picture of Matt. And again, I just used the closet door because I knew it would give me a pretty clean selection. What do? Hit W, go to the cloud, select subject. This is why we reiterated all of these skills and tools last week. What do I do now? Or last class in our Rose skills test. What do I do now? Layer mask. Voila. It was just that simple. And as we zoom in, we can see we've got a really nice, clean selection. And then we're going to bring over our picture of maroon bells. And I've already got mine down at about 40%, just so that I can kind of see where it's going to go. And then let me delete that layer mask. Here's the cool trick. Since we've already made our layer mask, we can copy it. Anyone remember how to do it? Right click on the layer mask and hit add mask to selection. Then when we go back up to this overall image and we pop our layer mask on, voila, we didn't have to do the work twice. What is the benefit of this? Well, it's just easy. You can play with any kind of background you want to put on it. You can really do whatever you want. But what can't you do? You can't move it around anymore because we have not made a clipping mask. We made a layer mask. Now, maybe you say, hey, Stacy, I'm going to do something cool and do an offset double exposure. Awesome. I might do it so that it's a little bigger or something. But that could be a cool way to work with this. The layer mask is just as editable as the clipping mask, but it just doesn't feel that way because we can't move it freely in front of us. Okay. Let me show you another one. I want to show you the buffalo one. I hope I have it handy because I also duplicated that one for you guys. I don't know where I put it. Maybe it's in the assignment module. Let's look here. As always, remember, I have this recording going for you just for class purposes today, but there is a complete walkthrough video on here of Matt, and I do things a little bit differently each time. So it's kind of fun to be able to choose your own adventure. For this, you're going to begin by making an 8.5 by 11 minimum new file in CMYK 300 PPI. You're welcome to make it bigger, just not smaller. If you said, hey, Stacy, I want to make this a square, excellent. Make it 11 by 11 or 14 by 14 or 18 by 18. Those are usually the common frame sizes because at some point you may want to print this and frame it, or if it gets in the show, we will print it and you may pick it up after. Please, if you get work in the show, pick up your prints after. It breaks my heart to not have them go home with you. All right. So you're going to follow these directions and complete your double exposure. For those of you that enjoy a written out explanation, I have a PDF right here. It's about 3 pages long and we can follow through this step by step. Okay, so hopefully one of these methodologies will hit right of the way that is good understanding for you. So what are you going to do? Choose compelling images. Please use your own images whenever possible. Go take pictures of your loved ones. When we search up double exposures Photoshop and we look at these images, I want you guys to tell me what you are seeing generally. Oh, what was that? Side profiles? Yes, side profiles. You can use a shot straight on. This is the one I did for my write-up for you guys. But often when you try to use an image straight on of a person, you end up having to mask out quite a bit of the image, mainly because we do not like seeing people that don't look like people. However, when we see a profile of someone, our brains are much more happy to say, oh yes, I can see part of this going into more of an artistic realm. So there's lots of different ways to go about this. You can go with more of a cityscape and modern. I really do love a lot of these. And you will also notice as you're watching some of your favorite shows, often the intro or splash pages, the intro to any show, there is a ton of double exposures. I can think of a handful. I know True Detective, they use double exposures on every single season. So this is your chance to say, hey, I want to do this, but in the way that I don't know, makes sense to me. So I recommend when you have your friends, family, or loved one in front of you, ask them to turn sideways. It will just make your job so much easier. Now, I'm going to show you a bunch of student examples from the past, one of them being a head-on picture, and the student won best use of photography in the show like 4 years ago. So does that mean it can be done, right? But I want you guys to do a bunch of tests before you really settle on whichever one you're going to either turn in or submit for the show. Play with angles, play with symbolism, right? And if you're like, I don't know what symbolism is, look up how can I symbolize certain things with images. Try to bring the best part out of each image. You're going to probably run into issues with stretching the picture out, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You may have to go and just find different secondary images, like whatever you are putting on top of your main image. I forget, does anyone have a DSLR camera in here? Andy and Avery, look in your manual or just Google it online if you can't find your manual. Many cameras do in-camera double exposures. I know mine does. And it's one of the like custom settings menus. And so what you do is you take your first picture, you tell it you're taking 2. I think you can tell my camera you're taking 3 or 4, and it'll overlap them all. But what happens by the 4th image, things are just blown out, right? But what I would do is take a picture of my kiddo and then turn around and take a picture of a bunch of flowers, and it will do this in camera. Just kind of a fun feature I wanted to throw out because I think Carla has a DSLR too. Next, experiment with exposure. What does this mean? Play around with curves, contrast, levels, brightness, to really get the picture to do what you want. A general rule is that if you want a portrait area to show, make it bright. If you want the underlying image to show, make that area dark. And I think I did a pretty good job of showing you that on this guy, right? Wherever it was light, the under image shows, and wherever it was dark, we don't get to see as much of that. And you can do that all in masking. Experiment with layer modes, right? We are always going to suggest using screen or lighten for this. Generally, overlay doesn't work as well because that tends to knock out a lot of shadows. So screen and lighten are probably the ones you're going to play with the most. So step 1, you're going to choose 2 or more images. When you're starting out with an image that is a portrait, you will need another image or 2 to mesh with it. We're going to extract or mask out the background of our image. Whenever you're extracting, I like that word. I don't know what kind of mood I was in. Or masking out, make sure you're using a layer mask. Do not just erase the background. We know that when we end up going back, we may need to add more area around a certain subject. And if it's erased, you just have to start over. Once you're done, you're going to do a new white color fill layer behind the subject. And remember, when you do a color fill, instead of just pouring a color in there, you're able to change it whenever you want. You go back to map. So this one is a gradient fill. And so I can change the angle of the gradient. I can go in and actually change the gradient. You guys see how much that changes it however I want. If I just did a new layer and grabbed my paint bucket, I want my paint bucket and just poured it in, see how I wouldn't be able to just quickly and easily change that versus going to layer, going to a new solid color fill, picking my blue and then bringing that under. Now I can double click on this and move it around and get a preview. This is the benefit to doing it via a paint bucket or a color adjustment fill. Any questions on this? That should feel very familiar. Thank you for the thumbs up, Andy. All right, next. You're going to adjust the base portrait with the subject masked out. We can do some basic layer adjustments and prepare for the double exposure. In this example, I turned the image black and white by going over to the saturation adjustment layer and taking it down to 0. You could also use a black and white adjustment layer. It is not always necessary. I just knew the image I wanted to make with this, and I wanted to drop out the bright red lipstick and the bright red eye makeup because I thought that might be really distracting for the kind of vibe I was going for. Next, you're going to create a new layer mask over the subject, holding Alt and dragging the layer mask. Same thing as right-clicking and adding mask to selection. Then we're going to place 2 environmental images, first a mountain and then a foggy forest. This example shows you how to do 2. Once you add both images, and I think we flipped the image around to kind of let the trees come over her shoulders in this, we're going to add that gradient map. And remember, you don't have to do a gradient map. What does a gradient map do? Adds cohesion to the overall color scheme, but you can just do a plain background color, but please do that color fill adjustment layer versus dumping your paint bucket. That way you can make those quick and easy adjustments. Now, in this example, we made a duplicate of the image of the woman and then brought her on top and played with the levels. And then in this levels area, you can really play around with how many facial features you want to come back. I did it a little bit differently with Maddie on this one. So I did duplicate the layer, but you can see I just masked out. Can you guys see that layer mask over there? I painted with a light opacity to just mask out certain areas. Okay, so everything is still completely editable. I could even at this point change out the picture that's in the background and still continue to use this background or this duplicate layer of him as a mask. And essentially at that point, I've created a mock-up because I could drag any image into the background. All right. Last but not least, spend some time masking out areas that you want to bring back. Like we want to bring back the eyes in a portrait. There's lots of different ways to do this, but you can spend as little or as much time in this area. It depends on the image. So here we can see this double exposure. We kind of pulled a lot of her background head out of it and let the mountain images define the shape. I kept it a little more subtle on this one to Matt and really didn't let it go that far. But by all means, we could continue masking this. Let me grab a brush and a black, and we could continue masking until we had, let me bring it back up to 100, brought back all of the features, right? And I've essentially gotten rid of my layer mask. See the difference there? I'm just turning it on and off. Please feel free to be as dramatic or subtle. It really depends on your message. Now, there isn't one that I'm looking for, and it is the double exposure Photoshop tutorial. It's one of this buffalo. I hope I can find it. Because I found it this morning and then I couldn't find it again. Well, I will just do it for you. It is, I would call it Swedish farm animal. All right. So I'm going to just delete all of my layer masks and delete all of this. Oh, I can get rid of that layer altogether because I can bring it over from tree forest, this one. Okay, so we've got Swedish farm animals. So here I'm just going to again copy it, and then I have it ready to paste over. So we're doing this as quickly and simply so that everybody understands the process, but remembers you're going to spend a lot more time on the concept. So here we have our sweet little Swedish farm animal. I'm hitting W to get my object selection tool active, letting the cloud make my selection. We need to boop his poor little nose out because it did not get all selected, and zoom in and look around and make sure it didn't miss any chunks of our little friend here. Next, what do? Mask him out. Just that simple. Is it the greatest mask selection in the world? Nope. This is why you would go back in with a brush. Oh, and I wanted to note this too, because I think I've had a few people ask me, they're like, I can't find my brush. It is because your brush is too big to be seen on the screen. So that crosshair, remember you can just square bracket left down. With black in my foreground, there we go. We want white in our foreground color. We're going to bump out and smooth out some of these areas. You will do this to your entire image. This is why we practiced with the rows. All right. We just want it nice and smooth. And if you go too far, we hit X and paint over with black. Let me zoom over here. I'm hitting X. I'm gonna bring back this little portion of his legs, just where it's kind of choppy. We'll get his little bum too. All right. So we've masked this out. Now I've copied over my watercolor picture. I'm going to hit Command V. Voila. There it is. I can be done as simply as this. Right? We need to, of course, move it around until we are satisfied. And then we can pop a layer mask on it, flip our background color to black, flip, thank you, square bracket up. And I'm going to take my opacity to like 65 and bring back the features of his face. Leave the rest to the blending mode of lighten or screen. I think screen looks great. Just that simple. I do want to add a little bit of color to this. And so I'm going to add a gradient mask. But when you do your gradient mask, this is what you're going to see. Actually, this is what you're going to see. Don't panic. Remember, you need to change this blending mode to soft light or overlay or something. But we can still play around with it. Come on, let me show something fun. I'm going to add another color to it. Let's make it neon crazy. And then we can come over to our screen. Oh, that neon crazy was too much. Let's pull that one out. Let's pull our white out too. Change this to screen or color dodge or lighten or soft light. Now we have kind of a fun, simple demo, and you can go in and add anything back that you want. I don't like how he looks like he's just floating, right? So I'm going to go with a low opacity on here. I'm going to flip to white because I want to paint back into my image and give him just a little bit of ground. Now it's not working the way I want it to because we have clipped this. So I'm going to have to go back in, copy my layer mask, add mask to selection, come up here, delete add my layer mask in. I need to delete this one. And then we can, I wanted to delete my layer mask. Here we go. Come back over here and really play around with adding some areas back in. So I'm on my layer mask. I've got my white brush and I'm just going to paint in the original ground on him so that I can kind of see him more grounded. I'm going to come back up to my start file, and this is really what I'm looking for. Questions? One image, right, like so, masked out background, and then add some sort of fun color to it. Do you need to add the color? Absolutely not. You're welcome to keep it as soft or as dramatic as you want. I've done a whole bunch of these for demos, but I would love to show you all some student examples. And this might help you kind of think and problem solve what's going to work and what's going to be difficult. So this one really isn't too much of a double exposure. It's more of a Jerry Uelsmann composite. You're welcome to work in any modality as long as when I open up the file, I see at least 2 images with some blending modes and some masks. That is the entire requirement for the piece. I think this one is so successful. She took a picture of her napping son and paired it with these mountains and made it look like he was napping on the mountains. I love it. This is the one that won Best Use of Photography. And this is just good masking. I think the reason that we're not bothered by it being a frontal portrait is because the image that gets superimposed or double exposed on it isn't very descriptive. You know, it isn't like one big flower. Sometimes flowers are kind of hard to work with. Here we have a dog with some fire. I love this one. It's just a view out of a, I don't know, old barn or outbuilding, and they photoshopped in another little house. And it was really successful. We had some stuff going on in 2020. We were getting weird with the Furbies. So we could go entirely patriotic or more modern or really simple. Here is Angie did this. These are her wedding portraits and her wedding bouquet. Or I'm sorry, not her wedding portraits. These are her wedding bouquets. And so she simply had her and her husband stand in some pretty dramatic light. She did go the direction of desaturating the subject. And I think it's really nice when you're working with bright colors. This way it doesn't compete. Remember my example with the lady with the red lipstick? I think something like red lipstick and bright red makeup would be really distracting on an image like this. This also won Best Use of Photography in 2022. This won Best Use of Photography in 2023, last year, Emma Corey. This one, Best Layout 2022, Nate Hagelin. See, I'm telling you, these Photoshop One projects can really make a big impact. Britt made a mock-up using a record. You guys are welcome to do that. It's a pretty simple, traditional one. Aaron Delman also won Best Use of, nope, Creativity Award last year for this piece. So it is 100% the exact same process. He just took it a step further to break it apart into 3 separate images that he brought back together. He plays bass and piano. Pretty sweet. And Jillian Winslow did not win anything, but this was in the show last year. This is spring, summer, fall, winter chickens. And a couple of them are her own chickens. And she admits she started with fall, this third one, and was like, oh, the colors, everything just fits so well. And then moved on to do, I think, the spring one, and then felt like she had to do summer and winter, even though it was more of a like struggle, I guess. So that is the first part of the assignment. And what I would love for you to have completed, at least in test form, for over break. Now, does it need to be done? Absolutely not. When you get back from break, we're going to do the second part of this, which is really the polishing and the presentation. And remember, you guys have until Thursday after break to get your pieces turned in. I will be at your complete disposal on Monday and Wednesday when we get back to work on these. So after you've completed your double exposure, I want you to find a mock-up of some sort. Maybe a magazine layout or a magazine cover, or just something as simple as, I don't know where I put it. Let me show you the one I did of Matt. Mock-up. It could be just this simple. So you go online, find this mock-up, and drag and drop into where it says, put your contents here. It really depends. I just want to make sure that you have it in a fully art component and a fully design digital, like portfolio ready component. Make sure while you are searching through a sea of mock-ups, and remember, I have a absolute ton of mock-ups for you in a little content module called mock-ups. So if you click on mockups, here's the 3 poster one. Remember the one with the neon girl, the purple, the green, the blue? There's that 3 poster. I think this one might be hanging banner mockup. That's the one I used of Matt. So download all of these. I've already like gathered them for you. Download them and save them in a little folder on your external hard drive. Or it can turn into a big folder on your external hard drive like mine. Oh, that was really not as dramatic as I wanted it to be. Oh, there we go. So I have absolutely tons and tons of mockups for whatever I might need. Make sure while you're searching for them, you're keeping the proportions of your mockup that you made in mind. If you made a horizontal, search for a horizontal mockup. If you made a vertical or square, search for those. When you open up the mockup, I've also written out all of the steps for you. Let me just do frame mockup PSD, open with Photoshop. So I'm going to open up this mockup, and this one's a really simple, easy one to use. It says edit contents here. We double click on it. I'll drag and drop over. I don't know if I have anything on my, I'm such a good girl. I cleaned up my desktop. Here we go, double exposure. Here we go. We'll bring this guy over. So I did make a JPEG of him. Turn that off. Make sure we're stretching him out so he fills the background. Keep composition in mind. What do? Hit save. Go back to my frame mockup. There he is. Just that simple. And if you need a step-by-step, open the frame mockup, find the edit here layer. This one says edit here. They're not all going to say edit here. They might say place design work here, but generally they're going to have a different color eyeball denoting the layer. And if you ever wanted to learn to change those, you just right click and you can change them to any color you want. This is nice if you are making a mockup. Next, you click on the gray area, select edit contents. So that's just what I did. Edit contents, brought this over. You can also double click on the thumbnail. Does the exact same thing. Okay. I just know some of you like to see the words like edit contents, and others of you are like, nope, I just want the quick command and double click on the thumbnail. After that, a PSB file will open. That's where you can drag and drop your JPEG of your image. So you will have to make a JPEG of whatever. I would just file, save a copy, make it a JPEG. That way you can drag it over. And then save the PSB file by hitting Command S, or just save out of your drop-down menu, and the double exposure will be placed in the mockup. Is it always going to place perfectly? No, sometimes you will have to move it around. So I'm going to go back to my PSB and I'll just Command T. I'll make it really small so it's not right. And then hit save, come back to my frame. See how it doesn't, actually it looks like it has a mat now, which is kind of nice. Let me do it more dramatically. There we go. Hit save. When we come back, we're like, oh, that's not right. Do you see how easy it is for me to go back to these PSB files? Make the edits that I want. Get him to fit nicely. Hit enter, hit save, and when we come back, there he is. You're gonna have to tweak every mockup, and some mockups are going to have a lot more options, like that you could change the background, or maybe you have it on a magazine sitting on a desk and there's a coffee cup. You could either get rid of the coffee cup or change the color. Remember, mockups are just Photoshop files, and so you can completely treat them like a Photoshop file. You can crop them, you can change the background color, you can change resolution. Also remember, not all mockups are created equally. Sometimes you will find the most awesome mockup and download it and it's just a JPEG. And you're like, well, shoot. I have to just throw that in the trash and start over. Where are we looking for mock-ups? Anywhere. Free Photoshop mock-ups. Oh, I hate when it does that. When it goes back to my history one. Oh, that irritates me so much. There we go. Free Photoshop mockups. You will find these everywhere. Free Pick is great. And you can type in, we want a mockup of a, what do you guys want? Oh, just magazine cover. Well, that was terrible. There we go. Perfect. This one is lovely. Let's go ahead and just try it out. Download it. Come over to our downloads. Double click. Let's see what we've got. Yes, we've got a JPEG, so it shows us kind of a preview of what we're going to get, but we also have a nice PSD. Let's open it up before we save it and see. All right, just as promised, here we go. This red area is the one will denote where to put your stuff. You can change the shadows and everything. So let's double click on the thumbnail. This is now our PSB. I think I had a, bring this guy back over because we can't seem to get enough of him. And we could also leave in certain areas, or we could just go straight. Well, I think I want to see the text. Hit enter and save. We come back, voila, it's there. Is it perfect? Nope, we're gonna have to spend some time moving it around. Maybe in the PSB file, we would be able to see it all. And maybe we wanna put him, like we like that background. Hit enter, save, come back, voila. Or you might wanna do a, I don't know, stroke around it or a frame around it. I don't like this magazine mockup because I can't change the text. When I found this magazine mockup, see how all of the text is editable? I can come up here, I can change that to whatever color I want. Everything, you know, I could change the year to August 24, or what month are we? March 24. Everything is editable. This is what I mean when I say not all mockups are created equally. And if you're absolutely in love with mockups, we make them in Photoshop too. But you guys have all the skills that you could go clean off your countertop, clean off your desk, and have just a really nice picture of your computer. Maybe put a fully gray screen on your computer, clean up, have your coffee mug or whatever, your phone, take a picture of it, and then you can simply go in and mask out your screen. Voila, you have your own custom made mock-up. Just that fast. Actually, it's a little longer process. You don't just, you can mask out the screen, but you use the shape tool. And once you make the shape tool, I'm getting into making mockups. I'll do a really quick abbreviated version because I saw a few eyes light up. Let's say we're going to do a mockup and we wanted my phone screen. I would take a shape tool with a mid gray and then turn it into a smart object. Then tweak it and convert it and do all of the changes I want to it, and then hit save. That way, when I open up a new file, double click on the thumbnail and the PSB opens, it will take all of those morphs and changes you made to that shape layer. As long as you turned it to a smart object before you made those changes, it will remember all those twists and distortions and stuff. It's pretty cool. So that's how mockups work. Questions? All right, we will stop.